The acceptance letter had been a clerical error. Cadet Registrar New York Vell of the Croth Dominion had processed 11,000 applications that cycle, sorting them by species classification, threat index, and pack hunting capability. Humanity's file had slipped through a filter glitch. Their threat index had been filed under negligible instead of quarantine pending. And before anyone noticed, a human named Joe had received a full scholarship to the Croth Predator Academy on Sector Moondrevis. By the time the error was discovered, Joe had already landed. Cadet Washar was the first to see the human walk through the intake bay. What was Croth? 8 feet of segmented obsidian chitin, for eyes that tracked heat signatures, and claws capable of shearing through hull-grade titanium. Wah had eaten 3 of his clutch siblings during the hatching season, as was tradition. He was considered gentle by Croth standards. He stared at Joe. Joe was carrying a backpack. It had a small pin on it, a yellow smiling circle. "It's soft," Wah murmured to Cadet Hydos, who stood beside him. Hy was Valori, a 6-limbed ambush predator from the deep methane oceans of Vel Prime. She had pheromone glands that could paralyze prey within 20 meters. "Very soft," she agreed, pupils dilating with something between curiosity and hunger. Joe looked up, saw 2 enormous alien predators staring at him, gave a small wave, and said, "Hey, I'm Joe. This is wild. You guys are huge. Are there other humans here?" There were not. Registrar New York Vell called an emergency meeting with Academy Director DeCroft and Training Commander Yvar. "We must rescind the acceptance," New York said, pulling up Joe's species profile. "Humans are classified as soft-bodied omnivores. No natural armor. No venom. No echolocation. No pack-bonding chemical signals. Thermal regulation through sweating, Director." DeCroft studied the screen. Her mandibles clicked slowly. "Has anyone told the human he was accepted by mistake?" "No." "Good." His 4 eyes narrowed. "Don't." New York and Yi exchanged a look. "Director, I want to see," Des said simply. "What happens?" What happened was Joe. Week 1. Combat Adaptation Training. The exercise was simple. Cadets were released into a blackout maze and expected to hunt each other using natural sensory gifts. Croth used heat vision. Valori used sonar. The Dreth twins, Mivor and their sibling, used collective electromagnetic pulse signaling to coordinate. Joe used a phone flashlight and a hand-drawn map he'd sketched from memory after walking the outer corridor once. He found every cadet. He didn't hunt them. He just appeared next to them in the dark, tapped them on the shoulder, and said, "Found you," in a cheerful voice. Washar, ambush predator, veteran of the Croth cold season trials, made a sound that the Academy's translator could only render as a shriek of pure instinctive terror. Joe apologized for startling him. Would it not sleep for 2 days? Week 2, Endurance. The course was designed for apex predators. 17 hours of running, climbing, swimming through hostile liquid environments, and hauling weighted sleds across a simulated frozen terrain. Most cadets finished in 12 hours. The Dreth twins, me and their clutch pair, finished in 9, which was a record. Joe finished in 16 hours and 42 minutes. He was the last one across the line. He was also the only one who was still moving at the end rather than being dragged across by trainers. He crossed under his own power, sat down, drank something from a battered metal container he called a thermos, and said, "Okay, what's next?" Commander Yvar, who had run the course himself in his prime and understood exactly how much it cost a body, stared for a long moment. "That is not possible," he said quietly. "Your species is not built for this." Joe looked up. He had the expression of someone who found the statement mildly interesting. "We're persistence hunters," he said. "Back on Earth we used to chase prey on foot until it collapsed from exhaustion. Took hours, sometimes a whole day." He took another sip from his thermos. "We're kind of built for exactly this, actually." He did not respond. He walked to his office and filed a revised threat assessment for Homo sapiens. He changed the classification from negligible to pending review. The incident that truly broke the cadets happened in week 3. It was supposed to be a psychological resilience exercise. Cadets were placed in isolation chambers and exposed to their species' most deeply hardwired fears, engineered stimuli calibrated from species databases to trigger primal panic responses. Croth feared the cold. Valori feared open, unenclosed space. The Dreth twins, me and sibling, feared silence. For Joe, the database listed the top human fears: heights, darkness, and social rejection. They put him in a dark room, alone, high above the ground. They watched on monitors. Joe sat down cross-legged, closed his eyes, and, the monitors confirmed this, fell asleep. He was asleep for 4 hours before a technician nervously knocked on the chamber door to check if he was alive. Joe opened one eye, said, Yeah, sorry, I was just resting," and went back to sleep. Cadet Washar, watching the monitor feed, said nothing for a very long time. Then he turned to High Doss and said, "What are they?" High had no answer. By week 6, a strange thing had happened. The cadets were not avoiding Joe. They were gravitating toward him. Washar, who had never voluntarily stood near a creature smaller than himself, had taken to walking beside Joe between training blocks. He didn't say much. Neither did Joe. But Wahad noticed that Joe was always aware, always scanning, always watching exits and angles, and being near that quiet, constant alertness felt, in some reptile brain way, what couldn't articulate, like safety. Hydos started eating meals near Joe after Joe, without being asked, had sat with her when she was struggling with the Academy's social ranking trials. He hadn't given advice. He'd just said, "Hey, I don't really get these either. Want to just eat and not talk about it." Hy had found this more comforting than she could explain to anyone. Even the Dreth twins, Me and Sibling, who communicated in electromagnetic pulses that Joe couldn't perceive at all, had started including him in their formation drills. When someone asked me why, they pulsed the equivalent of, "He stays." When things are bad, the soft one stays. That matters. At the end of the semester review, Director DeCroth sat across from Joe in her office. "You were admitted by mistake," she said. No preamble. Her mandibles were still. Joe nodded slowly. "I kind of figured." The welcome packet had a note saying my thread index was pending correction. "You could have left." "I could have," Joe agreed. He looked at her. "But the training was really good. And the food situation worked out once I found the kitchen. And honestly," he paused, "I think I'm learning more here than I would have anywhere else." They studied him for a long moment. "The other cadets," she said, "they're afraid of you." "I know. And yet they follow you." Joe was quiet. Then, "I think it's because I'm not trying to be scary. I'm just here, doing the work." He shrugged. "Maybe that's scarier." Director DeCroth, apex predator, 40-year veteran of 3 wars, said nothing. Then she pulled up his enrollment file and changed his status from error, pending removal, to active cadet, permanent enrollment. "Dismissed," she said. Joe stood, shouldered his backpack, the one with the little yellow smiling circle, and walked out. They sat alone in her office for a while after that. She updated the species database entry for Homo sapiens. Under primary threat mechanism, she deleted the previous entry and typed 4 words. "They simply do not stop."